Today on the Colour Forum, we are joined by industry veteran Heiner Müller. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. Heiner, please introduce yourself.
Well, first and foremost, Joanne, thank you very much for the opportunity for this podcast. Love to be here with you today. Well, let's just spool back about 40 years ago. I started just by chance in this industry and have been in it ever since. And I joined 10 years after I started in the industry. I joined Cytex, and I was responsible to introduce the Iris digital proofer in the German market. And about late 1990, I met the former owner of GMG, father of today's owners, and he actually bought the first Iris proofer from me. And as it turned out, there was really no software available to run it. So he said, like, well, but don't worry about it. My son's gonna develop a software to do that. And that very rapidly turned into a very profitable business for both of us. And I started introducing it, the solution, to my Cytex dealers, and they all started marketing it. And it was just like 2 years into that, GMG and the Iris proofer became a standard really in the German and the European printing industry. This is how it all started, and now we're back to where we are.
Does that proofer still exist?
It was actually being sold until I think the early 2000s. And then it was basically being taken over by standard proofing equipment like Epson's today.
Okay. Oh, amazing. So you've been in this a while, as you say. For anyone listening who is new to this, how would you explain direct-to-substrate proofing? Just in simple terms.
Okay. Actually, let me start by saying proofing for packaging has always been different from conventional proofing. So in commercial printing, obviously, apart from color accuracy, you may need to add a paper tint to your proof if you're not already using a paper which is conforming to the industry standard. There are no spot colors to speak about. Packaging is a completely different world, and there has always been the ultimate test for proofing. We got into the habit of talking casually about packaging printing. In reality, what we're doing is we're dealing with a diverse mix of industries, applications, print processes, combined with a wide variety of substrates that could not be more different. And when you think about it for a moment, there are actually 3 requirements for a proofing system in packaging. First of all, you need a large color gamut to encompass brand and spot colors to allow it to print them. The ability to print a high density white, for instance, for flexibles, recycled cardboard, paper, or for instance, even something like tin plate for metal printing. Finally, the ability to print on a wide range of original substrates. Alternatively, you could also use a transfer technology or even generic coated substrates. To give you an example, if you print a design on a standard proof that will later be printed on a metallised film or metallised cardboard, it's pretty much useless, to be honest.
Wow, okay. It really puts it to the test then, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There are also some more requirements, actually. Until a few years ago, people were used to use halftone printing in proofing. With larger screen or higher screen rulings today, this is no longer necessary. And then also, finally, not really a prerequisite, but if you go one step further, and you not only produce proofs but mock-ups, you may also want to visualize finishing effects like foiling, embossing, spot varnishing, something like this.
And what's driving this interest into the facilities and ability to be able to proof on so many different substrates?
Well, to be honest, if you think about the past, and as we just mentioned, the Iris proofer that was introduced in 1990, pretty much at the same time, Kodak introduced the Kodak approval, which did more or less everything which I just explained, and that was about 35 years ago. And this was almost like let's call it the gold standard for many years until it just went out of business. It was the gold standard for packaging proof. Okay, so there is an interest, and at that time, this was an enormous system, outrageously expensive, and the proof costs about 350, 400 euros. People were paying for that. So there is a need in the market for that.
Okay. And now we are managing to do this at a much reduced cost, yes?
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to mention we don't want to replace conventional proofing. So it's really an addition. We're just bringing a lot more to the table.
How exactly does this approach differ from traditional contract proofing?
I think first it's very important to mention that we do not want to replace conventional contract proofing, but rather make a substantial addition to it. It is inherent in this technology that direct-to-substrate proofing is not only used to produce this one final proof before you go to press, but it's being used much earlier in the process at the design stage where it can really demonstrate its greatest strength. And obviously the printer at the press controls is also very happy to have something which is indistinguishable to the final proof, rather than a paper proof.
And where does this fit in the process?
I'm not really, personally, I'm not really happy with the word or with the term prototype proofing, because many people feel it's only suitable if you're producing mock-ups, okay, and not just a proof, okay. And it also implies very often that there's a compromise regarding color accuracy. No, it's not. One thing is for certain, at GMG, we never compromise when it comes to color, okay. So the result, first and foremost, it's a very precise proof on the actual production substrate. But if you want to make a mock-up from it, you can easily do that. It's just what many, many people do, actually.
And is this an expensive way of doing things, or?
To be honest, it's in the nature of things. If you look at the investment, the initial investment obviously is higher than a standard proofing system. But if you talk about the cost per proof, so the running cost is amongst the lowest in the industry, since the only consumable you have is really your inks you have. Other than that, you're using conventional ordinary production substrates.
I suppose you've got a kind of perfect production from here on in, so there's a lot less waste moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody talks about sustainability. This is basically what everybody obviously has in mind. I wouldn't want to take it too far, the whole thing about sustainability, but obviously this sort of first time right, this saves a lot of costs, this saves a lot of redos, and obviously that also, lowers your sustainable footprint, obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a real world impact at the end of the day, and people do talk about sustainability. Can I ask where you think the biggest impact is from this technology across the different sectors?
Well, to be honest, anything which is obviously where the nature of the substrate plays a role. If you, for instance, have a white polyfilm and produce a proof on paper, that is not that much of a problem. But for instance, as I said early on, if you have a metallized film, if you have a metallized cardboard, or so, if you produce a proof on a paper, that's almost meaningless. If you do this now on a direct-to-substrate proofing on the original substrate, this will really give you a perfect rendition of the actual final printing. Or think about, for instance, any kind of textured materials where you have labels, untextured label stock, where you can really feel the texture of the material. You don't have that in a conventional paper proof. And then
Of course. The texture and touch and feel, exactly, yeah.
I always said, like, it's almost like a proof that appeals basically to everything. You can see the reflection of the light on a metallized surface. You can hear basically the rustle of a fine, delicate cellophane, for instance. You can feel the texture. Yeah. And then there is also there are some specific applications. For instance, when you think about shrink film printing, okay. Shrink film printing, people not only want to see the color rendition on the proof, they also want to check the distortion of the artwork. So you need to pre-wrap or pre-warp the distortion. So when you finally then shrink it around a container, like for instance a detergent spray bottle, okay, then it needs to be correct, and you have to pre-warp that. In order to check this distortion, you need to go onto the real production substrate, which behaves exactly the same, and with inks who do not hinder the shrinking process. Okay, and this is exactly what, for instance, also direct-to-substrate proofing does.
It's incredibly clever. I mean, you think about the amount of shapes that you can actually get a printed label or shrink wrap or even direct onto them nowadays. And yeah, the way the distortion gets taken into account. So is that how you would class as a surprising niche, if you like, in this case? An example of something very bizarre is the odd shapes.
To be honest, I'm an absolute fan of niches, because if you have a product which perfectly fits this niche, this is always nice, you know. One more niche I want to talk about, for instance, is metal printing, metal packaging. So typically, what people want to do is, first of all, they want to over varnish a proof. They want to do it on metal, on the real metal, blank or white metal, and they want to over varnish it. And very often, this is also then being heat cured, and the ink is resistant against any kind of heat, so it does not shift. The color does not shift. It does not flake off, and you can also deep draw it. So literally within half an hour, you can really make a can to present to your customer. So this is also, you know, something you can do. Or talk about in-mold labeling, when you basically print on an in-mold film, and this is then basically warped around a container. This is also possible. As I said, the inks are very flexible, heat resistant. And what's also important is when you compare it, for instance, to UV inks, there's no offensive odor. And very often,
Funnily enough, that was my next question. Can you use UV in this? But obviously not. And we go back to using all the senses, and there was no mention of smell. But obviously, if you bring the UV into it, there is.
You know, basically, yes, we also offer, of course, technology for all three different kinds of ink technologies, which is resin in this case with the Muto 628 resin multipurpose inks. But obviously there is UV, and obviously there's eco-solvent. Every technology has its application, for sure. If you, for instance, compare resin to UV ink, the problem always is that UV ink sits like a very thick layer on top of the substrate, whereby the resin inks actually permeates the surface and does not change the surface properties. So in terms of shininess, in terms of touch, as we already said. UV also typically you find banding effects, you find artifacts in the printing. So it just doesn't look right compared to offset or flexo printing, you know, which is completely the difference when you compare it to resin inks with a new direct-to-substrate approach.
And the color accuracy across all of this is now fixed with GMG.
This is obviously, you know, when you talk about direct-to-substrate proofing, what makes it a little bit more complicated than going on a standard proofing paper on an Epson, which sits, you know, in the corner, and you just press a button and print. Obviously, when you are able to print on a variety of different substrates, it adds complexity. So obviously, you need to profile for each and every print condition, print substrate combination. So what you did in the past was you were basically printing a chart for each combination, printing a chart, measure that, create a profile. And when you think about it, let's talk about, like, let's say like a brand owner. They have 5 brand colors. Okay. Now you have the same brand color. You have it on a label. You have it on a cardboard tray. You have it in flexo. You have it in offset. And all of a sudden you have 500 different combinations. Obviously, that becomes unmanageable. And this is where basically the superior GMG color management kicks in with a spectral technology, that you don't have to print these charts. So going from one substrate to the other substrate just implies you're just using a different calibration set, and you're done with it. So you can use this very complex technology and make it very easy for you just by using spectral prediction in the GMG open color technology.
How does that approach differ from kind of traditional profiling?
What it basically does, it's basically a large database characterization set for different print applications. So for offset, for flexo, for gravure, for instance. So all the properties, all the dot gains, all the behaviors, and most important also the overprint behavior of spot colors, which is basically the most complicated issue you have when you have overprinting spot colors or spot colors overprinting on process colors, how to predict the overprint behavior. Uh, in the past, you would basically do this in a profile or tweak the colors manually. In the open color application, you don't have to do that. It's basically a set of database and a spectral prediction based on knowledge. How do presses or how does a certain print process behave?
Has this all been input manually by a human at some point, or does AI take over in the management of this? How is it tweaked? That's a question from me to you.
To be honest, there's two ways to do things. First of all, you can measure. Measure is always superior to sort of visual tweaking, because it largely, if you visually tweak, that largely depends on the operator how to do things. Okay, can be okay. Most of the times, it is not quite okay. And if you think about overprints, you easily can have hundreds or thousands of overprinting situations in different tonal values. So this becomes rapidly unmanageable to tweak this manually. Measuring is okay, but this would imply that you have a print out of every overprint condition. Obviously, from a time and cost perspective, absolutely not doable. Or you do it basically the GMG way with open color, that you have spectral technology which allows you to accurately predict these overprints or press behaviors.
And then the devices that are used to check the color.
And GMG supports most common spectrophotometers on the market. If you talk about conventional proofing, you're using built-in spectrophotometers like on an Epson, which is standard technology. That obviously makes it very easy also to certify a proof, to basically put a stamp on saying like this is according to your standard or within the tolerances. Obviously, when you use something like the Muto now, it's a bit more complicated. You would just use an external device, but in essence, the same process. You're just measuring chart. You're just measuring foreground bar, for instance, for verification. This is, of course, part of the software.
So speed, time to market, how does this approach affect approval cycles and the time to market?
To be honest, I think the benefits for printers and brands are just as great. For printers, the potential for errors and costly reprints is drastically reduced. Okay, just think about a complex design on a film with opaque and transparent areas. You won't catch a mistake on a normal proofing paper. And honestly, as a customer, what would you prefer? For a brand owner, this is a completely different level than conventional proofing. Okay, so throughout the entire design and production process, you can always rely on something which meets all aspects of the final product, not just the color.
Okay. And that makes a massive difference to the creative teams.
It certainly cuts the approval cycle short, because again, anytime if you look at the entire production process from design to final printing, you have the ability to create something which is indistinguishable to the final product. Okay, at a push of a button, more or less.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, are the challenges or limitations that businesses need to be made aware of along doing this, or have you come across any hurdles?
Actually, this is inherent in the technology, that this is a little bit more complex and requires a little bit more attention than an ordinary office printer, which sits in the corner with just one roll of standard paper. So some companies, like agencies primarily, they might find it difficult to procure always the right substrate, so the actual production substrate. It's not a problem to procure 1,000, 2,000 meters, but if you want 20 meters on a 3-inch core, it can be a problem. I mean, for these, we also have alternatives, offer a wide range of generic media, which you might as well print upon on the Muto printer without no problem. So we offer both. You can print on your own substrates. If you can't access them, just take our range of generic media. It's not an office printer, so it requires a little bit more attention. So it's always good to point out one person who is responsible for the proofing system and does the daily maintenance or weekly maintenance with a little bit of cleaning, something like this. Other than that, there are no huge limitations to the system.
Okay, and it's something that every company can adopt quite easily.
Yes, and if you really look at at potential customers, this can be a prepress company, this can be a design agency, this can be a converter, a printer, even brand owners are looking into this technology, and they all don't have a problem to implement that.
And so practical considerations, I mean, what should businesses be thinking about in terms of cost of workflow when adopting this approach?
So I think, what is happening right now is that you have a lot of GMG users in the market. And GMG is the undisputed market leader in the packaging field worldwide, really. So there's a lot of people who like to take the next step and want to invest in this technology and upgrade their already existing GMG equipment. And for them, it's very easy. It's just adding another printer to the whole process, and you can start immediately. What is also very important is we at GMG, we just don't want to sell just a piece of software. A very, very important component in the whole system is the knowledge and expertise we have in-house. And we're more than happy, obviously, to relay this information to our customers to help them get going with this product and to really cut the training cycle as short as possible.
So, I mean, we do spend a lot of time building trust through example, as you say. I mean, can you share some examples where this has delivered clear value for customers and proven return on investment?
To be honest, we have hundreds of installations worldwide with eco-solvent technology where you use basically a transfer film or generic media, or, some aspects, for some companies are also using UV technology. This is just taking it one step further. Okay. And it's a complete game changer when you really go onto the real substrate instead of generic ones. The drive, the direction is about the same. So we have a lot of companies who are now using eco-solvent technology or UV technology who will basically then switch over to resin inks to the Muto solution.
Okay. And the feedback you're getting is very positive. Is there one direction in particular, or is it very varied depending on what people need?
In general, you can really say it's the answer to long-standing wishes in the market. And as I said before, you had this technology with Kodak approval a long, long time ago, and people were willing to pay really astronomical amounts of money for that just to get what we have now at a push of a button.
Which is incredible, absolutely amazing. How do you see the direct-to-substrate proof evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? Is there any further development that can happen? You've been in this a long time, Heiner. You've seen a lot of changes.
I think what you eventually will see, it's always like sort of reading the coffee grinds, but I think what you will see over the next couple of years is an increase in speed of the printer. You will probably also find specific applications, for instance, printer which only at a certain type of operation, for instance, like something only for paper, cardboard, or corrugated. Or you will basically see some proofing or short-run equipment for metal printing. This is something which we're already doing today, that we're just leaving the strictly spoken one-off proofing to sort of ultra short-run production. But this can be like a pre-launch printing of 300, 400, 500 copies, or for instance, personalization. We're also supporting already direct-to-shape or direct-to-object technologies, where, for instance, brand owners are printing on glass bottles, glassware, cans, which are personalized. I think this is also something you will see typically where today the digital presses are being used, that will be done in the future on relatively inexpensive equipment. So you will see this borders blurring a little bit between proofing and short-run production.
I mean, customization is definitely becoming quite a big thing, but I think what you're saying is this may actually become something that people who have smaller shops on Etsy, for example, they're going to be able to do their own printing, or are you still talking major company runs?
Actually, both. I think what you will see is that that large players in the market, so large printers, that they will adopt this technology for certain niches. As I said, like for ultra short runs, for personalized runs. You may even see brand owners, as we had with a major spirits company, that they basically put equipment to print personalized bottles at large events like a World Series football, something like this, where people then can go there and get their personalized bottle printed. When you think about color management in general, what we see is a diminishing of color expertise in the companies. So your color gurus are disappearing really from the market. So I think what we see is people are becoming more and more pragmatic about the whole thing, and they want to replace this with technology, maybe soon actually AI technology. And what you also see is that people are looking more into automated workflows. So in other words, automation will compensate for knowledge.
Okay. It was bound to take over at some point, wasn't it? Through leadership, how is the wider color management landscape actually evolving? Are we losing expertise and relying on these technologies, or?
I think you will see that basically, as I said, the deep knowledge, color management knowledge, is disappearing. And people now already have the problems to find suitable people to do that. And that is a fact. And again, we at GMG want to replace this again with automation, with a high level of complex spectral technology. What you also see is, and what I find very interesting when you look at the color management landscape in general, that basically it also emerges in other industries. For instance, like if you talk about industrial printing on textiles, home decorations, flooring. If you look at these people, they are perceiving themselves not as printers, but as floor manufacturers. But they're running exactly the same issues. When you basically put some flooring into your room, and then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, you want to put the same flooring into another room, and the color is different.
Of course.
Yeah. Or think about automotive industry. So all these people have exactly the same problems, and I think this is also eventually where we can help and where we can apply our technology and expertise in the market.
Wow, that opens up a totally new solution for business, doesn't it? Is this the kind of thing that excites you after all these years? What still fascinates you about color management, print, technologies, evolution?
To be quite honest, as I said, I started in this industry in 1980, which was completely analog. So there was no computers, there were no Macintoshes, no nothing. And people were just busy using camera systems onto films, onto contact films, and then combine all that into a page, for instance. So I think this industry has seen so many dramatic changes, and this industry is also known for being a very early adopter of new technologies, and is very open to changes and adopts to new technologies very quickly. And I think this is why I'm still fascinated, why I still love print, and why I still love color.
Yeah, your enthusiasm comes through. It shines. Honestly, when you talk about it, you're smiling, and it brings you to life. Anything as far as a takeaway, what should printers and brands be doing now to prepare for this shift moving forward?
I think again, what you obviously have is you have a higher awareness of sustainability. There's also European legislation, which becomes more and more complicated. And this, again, when we started about sustainability, obviously this has to be reflected in your proofing processes as well. So when you print on recycling media, when you print on recycled corrugated board, this needs to be reflected in your proofing as well. And again, be aware that you need to introduce automation to your processes. And this is something we really looking a lot at GMG, to also introduce more and more. We already have that. We can connect to any kind of graphic arts workflow in the industry, but we will pursue this technology. Other than that, we are there to support you in whatever it takes with your color needs. Okay, if you want to see direct-to-substrate proofing, we're more than happy to do some samples for you. You can send us substrates, you can send us artwork. We're more than happy to produce a sample for you, just to show you what you can do with it.
I will put the contact information there for everybody. Thank you so much, Heiner, for your time, your enthusiasm,
Thank you very much, Joanne.
your expertise.
Thanks a lot, and it was a pleasure.
You've been listening to The Colour Forum, the podcast from GMG Colour, where we bring together the people, innovations, and ideas that shape the world of colour and print. Don't forget to follow and share with others across the industry. You can contact us to book a demo via sales.uk@gmgcolour.com.